Hello, what's going on guys? My name is MC and welcome back to another Minecraft video. Wait, I'm banned from Broken Lands for 7 days. Well, it's time to do a Soul Knight video. Keep in mind that the format of this video is going to be covering the pros of each ability. Since one's pros directly relates to the other's cons, we will not be covering cons in this video. So let's get right into it, starting with Dark Blade. When you activate Dark Blade, you speed up and charge in front of you, and once you hit your attack button again, you release a powerful melee attack dealing at least 12 damage on an enemy. This is a very aggressive ability, and I don't recommend it to anybody that plays Soul Knight laid back. The first pro of Dark Blade is that it has better mobility and maneuverability. Better mobility is good on multiple occasions, such as running between rooms, which is boring from time to time, or you can run from an enemy's attack, or run behind safety, which is always useful, and you can't ignore the fact that better mobility is one of the most important factors in Soul Knight. But maneuverability isn't really that important, since you're invincible when you activate Assassin's ability, but it definitely helps you to get close to an enemy and deal damage to them. Killing a wave of enemies, or killing a very strong singular enemy fast, basically equals to better survivability in Soul Knight, so maneuverability is definitely a big go for Dark Blade. Assassin's got the best burst speed in the entire game, so if you're really all about that speed, Assassin is definitely the choice for you. The second pro of Dark Blade is one of the best and most important factors in all of Soul Knight. It has invincibility frames. If it's so important, why don't you put it in number 1? Because Doppelganger provides body blocking, which is another important factor in protection, which doesn't make Dark Blade stand out much more than what it's supposed to stand out for, but invincibility frames is definitely one of the biggest things in Soul Knight, because with invincibility frames you can dodge attacks, you can basically time your abilities very well to ignore all damage taken in a specific period, and that can be really helpful if you're dealing with high damaging enemies. For example, like Barcolan Leader with their giant 6 damage lasers, or some of the fire, whatever they're called, leaders that shoots like a 5 damage bullets. Those are very deadly attacks. If you time your abilities well, you can completely dodge them and feel no threat anymore. So invincibility frames definitely the biggest factor in Soul Knight, but not the biggest pro of Dark Blade in my opinion. This is also why I think Assassin is better than Rogue in Badass mode, because it has a longer invincibility frames, and if you can chain your abilities, you can activate your abilities as frequently as Rogue, but you can have more invincibility frames to dodge more attacks, which means less damage taken, of course. So that's why I think Assassin's better than Rogue in Badass mode. If you time your invincibility frames right, you can chain your abilities non-stop, and it would make this ability much stronger, which does mean it's more skill capped, but honestly, if you're really into the game, you would know Dark Blade is really insane if you can time your ability times right. The third pro is sort of a stretch, but I think it's a pro. It's that it has much better control overall than Doppelganger. Because Doppelganger, the two clones are controlled by AI. If you want them to body block you, they might just run in different directions and leave you vulnerable, and you will die. That's because those are bots, not you controlling the clones. But with Dark Blade, you can activate your abilities whenever you want to, and however you want to. This is only a pro when you compare an ability to Doppelganger, but that's just how it works around here. Moving on to our fourth pro is that it complements buffs and weapons more. I mean, you could argue that if you have a good weapon, if you cloned a good weapon, you would have a much better setup or something. But I think that if you have a good weapon, it benefits Dark Blade more than Doppelganger. That's because with Dark Blade and with a good weapon, you can chain your abilities way more. And if you chain your abilities way more, your power level will increase potentially like above the limits. I don't know why I just said that, that's not correct. But with Doppelganger, it's all AIs. They shoot when they want to, and if they don't want to, you're not gonna get as much value as your weapons. It all comes just back down to better controls. But if you can master these weapons, you can master your ability and chain them even more and make them even more OP, which is basically a good cycle that helps you get really, really good at the ability, and it just straight up outclasses Doppelganger. Fifth and final pro of Darkblade is that it's much more exciting to play. This is literally the reason why Assassin is one of my favorite characters in the entire game, because you dash in enemies, you hit them, you kill them, you have your abilities again. That's super exciting. If you're playing Soul Knight, which is a god view, third person, whatever, flat screen game, you're not here for some laid back content. You're here to have fun. You're here to mess around with pixelated characters and pixelated weapons. So, in my opinion, it's just much more exciting to play. It's not really practical. So if something is exciting, it's not really practical. You might argue it is because it gets your adrenaline pumping, but that's not the case with Soul Knight, which is a really laid back game on its own. But if it's much more exciting to play, you'll be much more down to play with this ability than Doppelganger, and you have more. Although you might not win as many rounds as when using Doppelganger, it's much more fun and you have a good time when you're using this ability. And with that, we have concluded all of the pros that Darkblade has to offer. Let's move straight on to Doppelganger. With Doppelganger, or however you want to say it, you summon in a clone that has 10 health and is controlled by an AI, just like the Staff of Illusion. The clones shoot on a clocked basis, and it does not matter how fast your weapon can possibly shoot, it does not affect the shoot cycle of the clones. Although the clones don't shoot that often, you can always get around twice the DPS you're getting when you're using a single weapon. Also, the weapons that are held by the clones get buffs from buffs and attachments, which means you can further buff the potential of damage output of these clones, which is pretty sweet in my opinion. Since Darkblade does not focus on damage output but overall utility, Doppelganger is the exact opposite, with two clones shooting side by side with your exact weapon. They might not shoot as fast as you, but they all do the exact same damage, and it can help you a lot when clearing a horde of enemies or just overall damage output. This is one of the reasons why I didn't want to do this video in the first place, because these two abilities are very different, and it's not really comparable since the playstyle for it is also very different. Although you might get higher DPS with good weapons when you have clones, I wouldn't necessarily say that Doppelganger is better and complements better weapons more, because if you can chain these Darkblade, it sort of doesn't matter if you do more damage anymore, because you're very safe and you can clear these enemies out no matter if they're shooting at you or not. Now onto the second pro of Doppelganger is that it can attract aggressiveness, and it can also body block you, which can help you prevent damage. This isn't really the biggest pro in my opinion, because Darkblade provides invincibility frames as I stated before, but attracting aggro is something that's way different from invincibility frames, because some bullets linger on the field for long times. For example, long tail blades that can pierce up to multiple enemies, it can even like shoot through walls, or lasers for some sorts, like Marcolan Leader's big giant 6 damage lasers. If they direct this laser or this high damaging attack elsewhere, you wouldn't have that big of a threat. Even if you had some little invincibility from, sometimes you can't fully dodge an attack. For example, you can't fully dodge a bomb by just simply rogue rolling, and that's a big factor, because body blocking and attract aggroness can completely redirect the damage or the attack to another place. It doesn't matter if the clone dies or not. All it matters is that it saved you from a really deadly attack, which is pretty important. Body blocking, in my opinion, isn't really effective, but I think you can do it. If you really want, like standing in place and deflecting on a bullets, you can use a melee weapon. But if you want them to body block you, it still works, but their hitbox isn't like gigantically big, and also they wander in different directions. But with 2 clones, it's definitely a big factor that you can body block with them. Body blocking and or attracting aggressiveness is not really my playstyle, since I don't like doing it, but I've definitely seen some good players that can utilize these abilities really well, so that's a definite go for Doppelganger. The clones only have 10 health, so you gotta watch out. If they die, they can attract more aggressiveness. But the cooldown on this ability is not really that long, and it's like always charged when I want to use it, and which is good, and that's also a big factor. But that only like works towards more attracting aggressiveness or body blocking, since you can only have up to 2 clones at a single time. So having less CD does not strictly mean higher DPS if you can keep these 2 clones alive. The third pro of Doppelganger is that it has a much lower skill cap, which I think it's a pro in my opinion. This ability is very laid back because both the clones are controlled by AI, they shoot on their own, you don't have to care about it that much. But with Dark Blade, you have to consider every single movement, when you want to activate your ability or not, and it's just really hard to master. So that's one thing that I really want to touch on this ability. And you might consider having a lower skill cap as a con for this weapon, which I do not completely disagree. But most players playing Soul Knight, which is not like the type of pro you are, which still doesn't mean getting it's a laid back ability is definitely more fun or more relaxing for people to play. If you want to play an intense game, you can play an FPS or first person shooter. But with Soul Knight, as I stated before, you're here for the fun and you're here for relaxing from other stressful games. So that's a pretty good pro in my opinion. The final pro of Doppelganger, which is something I really want to touch on because it's a massive con in Dark Blade, is that it is better against bosses. I mean, Doppelganger is. The thing with Dark Blade is that it doesn't do damage, and you have to get really close to an enemy to even try and burst the damage or try and even, I don't know, chain the ability, which is cool in normal rooms because normal enemies are easy to kill, but once you have bosses, it becomes insanely difficult to chain your abilities and overall provide that many benefits in killing these bosses. But with Doppelganger, it's just more DPS, which is always good for cleaning bosses, but that does not strictly mean that Doppelganger is the best thing at taking down bosses. There's definitely much more DPS options out there, but that is just something that's better over the Dark Blade. And when I'm playing Dark Blade and when I fight bosses, I typically only use the ability to dodge attacks, which is very lackluster because, you know, this cooldown on Dark Blade is not the shortest. For example, like Rogue's ability, which it's okay, but Doppelganger is just like 1 more times damage, and which is good. It's always good. So that's something I really want to touch on. It doesn't mean Doppelganger surpasses all the DPS options, but it's just one thing that it has over Dark Blade. For new players having trouble taking down bosses, Doppelganger is pretty good, but Doppelganger is definitely better at taking down bosses over Dark Blade. So if you're relatively new at the game and does not know how to use Dark Blade correctly, I would recommend you use Doppelganger just for how easy it is to kill bosses. With that, we have concluded all of the pros of the 2 abilities, and now on to the moment you've all been waiting for, which is better. Well, it all comes down to personal preference. I am going to give an answer in this video, but if you like one or the other and you don't agree with my opinion, that's completely fine, and please do not dislike this video. In my opinion, Dark Blade focuses on utility and versatility, which can be a big factor for somebody that plays Soul Knight. With currently my style is just running around in rooms and killing people, which is probably the most fun way to play Soul Knight. As for Doppelganger, it's much more the brutal DPS side, and it's more laid back since, I mean, those clones are controlled by bots, as I've stated for like 7 times in this video already, which can be another big factor for some of the other players who just like to cover the entire screen with bullets and feel cool, which is definitely a very respectful group of players, which I have some friends that play like that. If you saw my video where I just made a 20-minute video of one assassin playing badass mode, you'll probably know what my choice would be. And if you're a very experienced, seasoned player, you will probably know. And the winner is, of course, Darkblade. I cannot think of a better situation where Doppelganger is better than Darkblade except for taking down bosses, or just normal boss rush. The thing about Darkblade is that it's so versatile and it can keep you so safe that sometimes you would not even need to worry about your surroundings anymore. You would just think about dashing in enemies, killing them, dashing again, killing the enemies, which is super fun yet super practical in my opinion. I can see where they're going with Doppelganger because it's a ninja or something, but it never hit the spot for me because I never was a fan of clones, or I mean that high of a DPS, which still is not high compared to Berserker or Knight. Those 2 clones only have 10 health, which is a pain in the butt, which they die so quickly, and it's just so unpractical and so frustrating that I want to ditch this ability and get back to 2,000 or whatever. How much did I spend? That many gems back, because I could have bought skins with it. Some people are really big fans of Doppelganger, which I currently do not understand, but I can still see this ability being really good and played in multiple game modes, but in badass mode where each bullet does so much damage, they just like instantly vaporizes your clone. You can't get the DPS, they can't protect you as much as invincibility frames. I do not see the reason why you would choose this over Darkblade. There is one specific playstyle as seen in the footage here where I swung my sword and protect my clones, which they dealt the damage, which is a respected playstyle, but I never was a fan of it. As I've said before, all I like to do is dash into enemies and crit them out. So if you're a really good player at Soul Knight, you would know that how much value the Darkblade gives you, and how insane it is to have that long of an invincibility frames. In my opinion, Assassin's one of the best characters to play badass mode, just solely because how he can chain his ability, how he has that long of an invincibility frames, and because he's got really decent stats instead of 4 shield, 6 health like Rogue. And if you choose Doppelganger, it sort of ruins how Assassins is played, which in my opinion is something that's even worse than how bad the ability actually is. So, in my opinion, Darkblade is just overall much more superior. It's much more fun to play, and it provides more value overall instead of just bland DPS, which you feel free to disagree on. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. And that will do it for today's video. Hopefully I'm unbanned and Broken Lens in 5 days, and I will make a video on there. If you enjoyed this video, which I believe around 0% of you guys stayed until this point, please be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications for more awesome content. Yay, this is awesome. I freaking want to die. Okay, that's enough for today's video. Goodbye.